GoForThe2.com in with the Week 2 predictions. Before I get into the predictions, this coming Saturday, SportsGrid.com. SportsGrid.com. Check it out. College Football Today returns 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Be talking about all the games on September 12th from 12 noon straight through 8 o'clock. So check it out, SportsGrid.com. It's also on Roku and Sling TV. And then from 12 to 4 straight hours of in-game live. I'll be breaking down all those games at 12 o'clock, and there's some good matchups. Iowa State, UL Lafayette, Baylor, La Tech, Army, UL Monroe. I'll be talking about all of those games in terms of an in-game live perspective. SportsGrid.com. I'll be on from 10 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Check it out, Roku, Sling TV. I'm putting out a pick video. All the picks will be out on GoForThe2.com. These are game specific. Talked about North Carolina and Syracuse in a previous video. Going to be talking about Georgia Tech and Florida State now. So check out all the picks on GoForThe2.com. Got off to a slow start in week number 1, but I had an opportunity to watch these games this weekend, see the progression of some teams, see how most of these teams were prepared, and I feel very confident heading into week 2 with ACC and Big 12 play kicking off. So let's talk about this matchup in Tallahassee between Florida State and Georgia Tech. Florida State last year, 6-7 overall. They won those 6 games against 5 FBS opponents who had a combined overall winning percentage of only 451%. That led to Mike Norvell being hired as the new head coach. Some turmoil in June and July with the team in terms of his communication. They seem to be right on the same track heading into the month of August, and we have to see how that situation plays out. Week 1, is this team prepared from a scheme perspective, both offensively and defensively? When you look at Florida State as a whole, last year with Cam Akers, this was an offense that failed to run the football consistently. Offensive line concerns for the past few years under Willie Taggart just continued last year. They averaged 140 rushing yards per game. That was in the lower third of FBS, and that's going to be a cause of concern going up against a revamped defensive front in Georgia Tech. When you look at Florida State, from their offensive line perspective in terms of depth, they're going to be starting on the left side. Starting center is a redshirt freshman. Starting guard is a sophomore. Starting tackle, another redshirt freshman. That's an area of concern for me from an offensive line perspective heading into this matchup against Georgia Tech. James Blackman was named the starting quarterback for week 1. Last year, he completed 62% of his passes, over 2,300 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, has his big play target in Tamorian Terry, 60 receptions, 1,188 yards, and 9 receiving touchdowns. They're going to be going up against a veteran secondary in Georgia Tech, led by Trey Swilling, son of former New Orleans Saint Pat Swilling, very athletic corner, plays nickel, plays at every position, and there's a group back there that's all juniors and seniors. They're going to force James Blackman to read coverage and work down the field, and that's the matchup to play out in this ball game against Georgia Tech. I've been very impressed in terms of watching Jeff Collins in terms of his progression as a head coach in Georgia Tech. This was a team last year that was 3-9. They failed to run the football consistently up to Georgia Tech standards. They were a triple option offense and in the top 10 in terms of rushing offense, top 5 for the most part, under Paul Johnson year after year after year. And they established a more balanced offense under Jeff Collins last year. They averaged 155 rushing yards per game, but that offense could not stretch defenses vertically. They only averaged 133 passing yards per game. Much had to do with the offensive line. They were more of a zone blocking type of offense. They weren't good in pass protection. They were better off from misdirection, and that's what Jeff Collins had to coach up last year. But he's done a very impressive job. I watched his press conferences, but more importantly, I've watched in terms of this progression, in terms of he's added weight on both sides of the football in terms of the interior. Temple, if you look at their style of play under Jeff Collins, he took over for Matt Rule and Steve Adazio. physical blue-collar coaches. That's what Temple has. That's what he's trying to instill in Georgia Tech. You look at the offensive line under Jeff Collins this year, they're going to average, now they've put on 18 pounds of muscle from a player perspective. On the defensive side of the ball, it's going to be 17 pounds per player, more muscle and more weight on that defensive line. So they're getting stronger in the interior, and I think that's the matchup to see play out in a week one ball game against Mike Norvell and Florida State. Make no mistake about it. On paper, Florida State is head and shoulders above Georgia Tech. We know they get 4- and 5-star recruits. That's not the question. Can that translate onto the play, onto the field? That has always been the question for Florida State. Since they won the national championship in 2013, there's been a slow regression. Started with Jimbo Fisher, really came through with Willie Taggart, and now with Mike Norvell, it needs to get back on track. But can he do that with limited practices in year one with a conference-only schedule against an opponent that is a disciplined team? That's what I want to see. I think it favors Georgia Tech in this ballgame. You look at the quarterback in terms of James Graham for Georgia Tech. He progressed last year, 12 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Jordan Mason is a solid running back. He's a tough between the tackles runner, yards after contact. The offensive line has gotten stronger. Look for Georgia Tech to dictate the tempo, keep Florida State on the sidelines. And I like the defensive line play for Georgia Tech going up against the inexperience on the offensive line. I feel like Florida State wins this game, but it's closer than people think, and I think it's under the 12.5-point number this coming Saturday.